Hello, everybody. Let's have a mystical conversation today, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, share dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. A mystical conversation is what happens when we lift above our ordinary selves, our human minds, and we look at our lives from that place of divine inspiration or soul's wisdom. I'm Sue Frederick, and I'm the author of several books, including Through a Divine Lens and Bridges to Heaven. And I'm a lifelong intuitive, a master numerologist, an ordained unity minister, a soul regression therapist. I'm an overachiever, as you can see. And my guests today are so magical. I can't wait to share them with you. I met them at the Helping Parents Heal conference and sat by them by divine order and just adore them. It is evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and the beautiful, extraordinary Maggie Clark, who is a healer and has her own line of work. So let me first read their bios. Jamie Clark offers powerful and accurate validations of the spiritual dimensions around us. As a spiritual teacher, Jamie shares how to integrate the natural psychic senses with the empowerment of spiritual knowledge to help create a more fulfilling life of love, happiness, and success. Jamie's avid curiosity to understand how his gifts work have led him to participate in scientific studies about the afterlife and mediumship. As a master educator in spiritual development, Jamie shares his wisdom through his podcast, Psychic Evolution, the podcast where you discover the psychic potential within and learn how to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship abilities. He's also the author of several books. We can talk about that more. And you can find more about him in psychicevolution.net. I think I got that right. Exactly. Now I want to talk about Maggie. Maggie Clark is the co-host of Psychic Evolution podcast and the Goddess, the Witch, and the Womb podcast. Believe me, girls, you got to listen to that podcast. She talked about the moon the other night, and I watched it, listened to it. Phenomenal stuff. And she's a prolific spiritual coach, an accomplished healer. She's been a healer since 1994, and she'll talk about that more today. She is committed to helping people find a way to blend their spiritual life with their everyday life for empowerment, healing, and growth. The author of 365 Days of Tarot, Inspirational Tarot for Your Daily Life. She's a gifted tarot reader, astrologer, and a healing arts practitioner. Together, they team up for the show. They have their own podcast, Psychic Evolution podcast, that I was honored to be a part of. So anybody who's listening who wants to know more about their own psychic abilities, these are the people that you turn to. Say hello, you guys.
Hey, hello. Thanks for having us on. We're looking forward to a great conversation.
I just love you both so much.
We love you.
So first questions, I have lots of questions for you both. I want to start with Maggie because I just love on her so much. And she's the quieter of the two. So I want to give her an opportunity to get her story in. No offense. I'm married to a man who talks even more than me, if you can believe that.
Great compliment. That's beautiful.
Yep. So Maggie, I want you to talk about kind of your mystical awakening. I think you said 1994, when you chose to quit being an ordinary person and really step into your gifts.
I sure did. So it was in 1994, it was a summer, and I was playing with my life force energy. And back in 1994, you only had several books you could choose from. And I was blind. I had no guidance. And so it was this book, and I pulled it off the shelf, and it was Cultivating Your Female Sexual Energy. And I was like, what is this? And so I was just looking at it, and it gives you all these exercises to do to cultivate your energy. And it's really cultivating your chi, your life force energy, activating your chakra system. And I was like, what is this? And so I started working with my energy unbeknownst. I had no idea what I was doing. Just I read one chapter, I flipped it open, read a chapter, got tired, fell asleep. Well, in my sleep state, I was in that in between sleep state. And I met this woman who's my ideal female, which was my soul essence. And she goes, come here, I want to show you something. And we were at this bottom of this beautiful, like wooden staircase. It was ancient. And we were standing at the bottom of the staircase. And she goes, okay, left hand up, right hand down. And we clasped hands. And she goes, left hand to receive, right hand to give. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but it's normal energy dynamics when you learn about energy practicing. And I was jolted with this bolt of energy coursing through my whole body. I mean, it was like lightning. I've never felt anything like it since. I was completely just activated into my Kundalini, but I didn't know what Kundalini was. I was like, what is this? I woke up and I could open my eyes, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed and I freaked out, but I couldn't freak out because I was paralyzed. And so after about 5 or 10 minutes, I finally was able to move my body. And I was like, I like huddled up against a wall and I was shaking. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh my God, there's something to this. But I'm scared now because if you open your Kundalini without any guidance or without any, I had no idea what any of this was. And it was just like, boom. And so a few months later, I got a new job through a friend of a friend of a friend, right? And I was working in this awesome Italian restaurant, really good food. And I was a cook and I was just doing my thing, going to college. And my friend's like, oh, I know this amazing person. And because we started talking about energy, because I was trying to figure out this energy thing. And she goes, oh, I know a lot about energy, but I have a teacher that's helping me and he reads tarot. You should get a reading from him. And so back to back, I had these two experiences that woke me up. Wow. And the tarot reading I actually was this man's apprentice for 16 years. This tarot reading that I had blew my mind. Oh, it woke me up. It almost took the veil off my eyes and said, the world isn't what you thought it was. And all of a sudden I had soul purpose. All of a sudden I had meaning. All of a sudden I had connection to spirit. I had connection to, oh my God, my life has a reason. Wowzer. Like everything, like truth just rang in my ears. And it was at that point where it's like, this is what I want to pursue. And so I took 6 months off of college thinking, okay, let me see where this goes. I tried to go back and it never felt right. And I was like, you know what? Scratch this. I'm going to study with this person. I am going to dedicate my life to a spiritual path. I'm going to break out of the norm because now I found myself. Like I can't go back and go be a veterinarian and go do all these things. And, and all these things were crumbling anyway. It's like, could you even be a veterinarian? Could you even euthanize an animal? I don't think you could.
Right.
Like, can you just go forward with this? And so it was at that moment, 1994, November 1st, I made a commitment to my spiritual path and to learning what I needed to learn. So, and my mentor, his name is Marion. He's on the other side now and helps me from the other side now. He was amazing. He was a trans channel and he didn't channel a lot of loved ones from the other side. That was a very rare occurrence that would happen. Although that was one of my first introductions to trans channeling because one of his friends who was a Native American Lakota Sioux chief that he had trained with and studied with, he had passed like 2 weeks after I met Marion. Was sitting having coffee and he channeled through Marion to let us all know that he had graduated life. But really he would channel angels. He would channel like spirit guides. He would channel, and he was a complete trans channel. So he had no memory between when they came in and when they left. He would just pick up a conversation where he started. It was like he was just gone in another world. And it was really fascinating. So for 16 years, my life was full of these mystical experiences all the time. It was so rich. It was so full. And he was an amazing healer. he was like the type of healer, like back in the day, like in Tibet, the monks would ask him to go there, but he couldn't go because he was too sick to go. He was when I met him, he had gone into 14 years. He had 14 years of dealing with a blood cancer. And he was in remission when I met him, but his body wasn't up to traveling. But he was a type of healer that everyone's like, come teach us what you know. So I got to really study a different way of healing before I even studied the chakra system, before I even studied all the traditional things that the routes you would go on. So my way of healing is vastly different, only because, I just study different. And then I add other practices later on that I really, really love, like Jinshin Jitsu and cranial sacral. But those experiences pulled the wool off my eyes, allowed me to see, allowed me to feel into who I was. And once I knew, I was like, I'm in like Flynn. And I made a huge commitment and I never looked back.
And the best part about it is that you followed it, that you weren't afraid, because many people I've worked with.
I was afraid.
Well, you did it anyway.
Yes, I did it anyway.
I've worked with so many people who have these kind of, and I've studied Kundalini yoga, so I know what you're talking about, these big moments of Shakti awakening, and they decide that it means they're crazy or something, and they go take a medication, and they just start trying to shut all that down. Whereas you, Maggie, said, this is all real and valid, and I want to step up to it. You're also a 22-4, Maggie, like me. So
yes,
of course you did. And you built this huge healing practice and awareness. The other thing I love about the story is your tarot teacher came forward to open you, really, and my numerology teacher came forward when I was ready to open me to this whole mystical view, unlike traditional numerology, which is probably just like your teacher was kind of unlike traditional tarot, like teaching you a whole different kind, correct?
Absolutely. It's much more esoteric.
Yes.
And out of the mainstream. When you read a tarot book, you're going to get someone's interpretation. It's always going to be the same thing because they're basing it off of like 100 years ago,
Right.
So part of what I like to do is watch the evolution of the tarot. And I love my huge passion is to teach more than anything. So I love to teach people a system of learning, whether it's astrology or tarot, a system of learning it. So they are just putting the pieces together and their intuition can be a part of the process.
Beautiful.
And and then they can enjoy reading because it's not just a script they're reading. It's this intuitive activation that they can experience. They just have to maybe get their other side of their brain, their left brain, to think about how the numbers work and the elements work, get them thinking about those things. And then the intuition can just kind of filter through.
And people can learn more about your classes on the website, right?
Of course, yes.
Is it psychicevolution.com or .net?
Well, psychicevolution.net is for the podcast. And then jamieclark.net is for Jamie's website, and maggieclark.net is for my personal website. But Psychic Evolution, there's links to our websites there as well.
Perfect. So Jamie, now I want to hear about your mystical awakenings, because you've told a lot of stories about growing up psychic, that you have always had these gifts and that your mother was psychic. Do you want to talk about some of that and what your mystical awakening to become who you are, what that was?
Yeah, I always say I'm slow but sure. I had to do this my whole life to go, oh, okay. And my activation was at 5 years old. I was walking in from the living room into the kitchen, and as soon as I crossed that threshold, I was just stopped in my tracks. And my mom was a couple of feet behind me. And this wave up above the kitchen table off to the left-hand side is Jesus, the Christ, looking at me with his arms down like this, angled, and he had spaceships over his shoulders. And whoom, I was just washed over by this vibe of energy, and I was sensitized. I was so fortunate because my mom was an amazing psychic medium, and I got to grow up with the flavor of that evolution. It wasn't so much that I had to contend with the beautiful religions. I got to be me, and to see my mom in action was huge. But again, JC Jesus is one of the people who I've connected with on many different levels and who helps me and others in many different ways. So it was a huge activation, and it was a brilliant dynamic because I was so young. I just went with it. I'm like, I don't know, but here we go. And
So
so after
great.
that, yeah, it was just amplified. And that's not only what I do, it's who I am. I don't know how to be anything different, in that
So
first
Jamie,
nature.
when you came of age, like tell the listeners, you must have had people saying, well, you got to get a job, you got to get a career. Like, did you right away start doing psychic readings for income, or what was the story of shifting?
Yeah, psychic Tourette's. As a kid, I was going up to people and I'd always ask, "Hi, I know I don't know you, but may I say something to you?" And I'd share whatever it was. And they were like, "What? How did you?" And so this is a little kid who doesn't know them, giving them validation about a life experience that they're like, "Holy cow." So it allowed me to be comfortable in sharing that information. Like I do, it takes a lot of guts to do this kind of stuff.
Right.
And the more that you feel comfortable, the more you can bring comfort to other people. So I've been very thankful to have it as a step stage process that as I find myself within life, I find that life within me and bring it to the surface of consciousness beautifully, effortlessly, and just because I can.
Wow, so good, you guys. But
Oh,
let's
sure.
get to the really fun part, the love story.
Yes. This is the most fun part because everybody loves a good love story.
Yep. So
Yes,
Maggie,
ma'am.
you tell us first. Go.
Okay. So Jamie and I had known each other in the psychic community for a couple of years. And, I was in this place where I was kind of like, okay, my mentor had passed. I wasn't depressed or anything like that, but I was like, okay, what's next on my life? What's next on my journey? So I was working several, 22 for probably 7 jobs at that time, trying to figure out what life was going to look like now. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And I just got tired of like, okay, I go to work, come home, maybe have a glass of wine, go to bed, same thing every day. I was like, I got to start dating again. Maybe I've got to do something. I have never been a big dater. I never thought I'd get married, but I was like, it's time to go have some fun. So I put myself on dating sites, which is an absolute interesting adventure. I'm not going to call it a nightmare today. I'll call it an interesting adventure. But what it did for me was it kind of opened up a door. It opened up my willingness to say yes to new experiences. It opened up my energy to kind of be like on the prowl, that little lion on the prowl going, okay, I'm going to see what I can find. So it kind of just opened all those things up and it freed up some of my energy, some of my life force. And then I was like, I went on a couple dates that weren't so great, because nobody could get me. They didn't understand my language. I had to explain what energy was. I'm like, why doesn't everybody know what energy is? Everybody should know. But it wasn't the case. It was like, I'm now 20, 30 years ago trying to explain what you're not even at a level of consciousness to understand. And no offense to the people, they were very nice, yet I just couldn't see myself in those relationships. So I decided, all right, I didn't want to date in my business community, but it's like that's where all the people were.
Right.
So
The
I
people
was
that
like,
get you.
exactly. And I was like, I really like Jamie Clark. He's kind of fun. I'm like, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder if he listens because all he did was talk, when I met him. But of course he was working and he does have psychic Tourette's when you see him. Hey, let me tell you something, blah, 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 blah. So he was actually coming up to present for us in Prescott at one of our events. So my friend Liz, who is helping put on these events with me and my other friend Sue, but she was taking Jamie to a TV station to do an interview. And I was like, well, find out if he's single, like just ask him, like, how's it going with your girlfriend or whatever, find out. And so she calls me, he's like, yeah, he's single. You should call him. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. First, ask him if I can call him on a personal level, not a business level, because I'm not going to cross the line, like if you're going to give me the hand and say no, because,
Yeah.
then I want that hand right away. I don't want to step over anyone's boundaries. And he said yes. And so I called him right away. I left him a voicemail because he never answers his phone. And even now,
I totally
and
understand, Jamie.
it goes off all the time. And so I left him a message that said, hey, I know I'm going to see you this weekend at the event, but I would like to ask you out on a date. If you're interested, that's great. If not, no worries. I'm just putting it out there. And
Let
he
me
said,
pause
yes.
and say, women, are you listening here? She saw what she wanted and she made the move.
Yes.
Important. All right, continue.
It is. And so many women are waiting for the men to make the move.
Right.
But they, come on, we're the ones that have to be confident in ourselves and know what we want and go grab it. Go
Right.
out and grab what you want. And so he said yes. And then we had to schedule, our schedules are crazy. So we scheduled our first date for like almost a month later. It was actually October 29th.
Oh.
And I remember all these weird dates.
Beautiful.
And he cooked me dinner. And I was just like, you want to cook? Yeah, cool. I'm coming over for dinner. This is great.
Yeah.
And we sat and we had this wonderful, like 3-4 hour conversation over a relaxing dinner. And, it was just like, he listened. And I was so shocked because when Jamie in the public, he talks a lot. And so I was just like, whoa, okay, there's an exchange happening and a
Right.
synergy happening. And I was just all fired up and I was like, oh my God, the conversations were amazing. There's very few people in life where you meet them and you could spill your guts to them. And Jamie was one of those people. And I was like, why did I tell him all of those things? These are my skeletons. These are the things that I don't share with any, these are so private. But he could understand the energetic dynamics of what I've gone through in my life. So I found myself just being, I'm going to cry, I'm so in love, but I found myself just being willing to expose my true sense of self, my true essence. And he shared with me all these things. And I was like, whoa, and it was very interesting. When I walked in his home, I said, that little statue of Nefertiti over there, it's got, a spirit around it. And he's like, oh yeah, very few people notice that. I'm like, yeah,
Wow.
So we were very well unified already.
You
And
remembered each other.
absolutely. And it was wonderful.
Yes.
I love so much about that story. And in numerology, the soul agreement between the two of you is the number 7. So it's perfect that you both were on your own spiritual paths already when you met, because it's not an agreement that says, let's come together and just build a home and a house and a hearth and, have babies. It's really about, let's come together. And of course, we'll be in love, but it's all about spiritual principles, spiritual learning, spiritual teaching. And you were both at a point in your journey where that was the agreement you were looking for,
It's so interesting. By date 2 or 3, I knew this question was coming, are you ready to be only dating me? That type of, I knew it was coming. And
I'm coming for you.
And that was really not in my brain at all, because I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to, I have an Aquarian moon, really rebellious. And I like my freedom. I like my independence. I just wanted to date. That I was only looking to date. I wasn't looking for the forever after thing, but I knew the question was coming. And to me, if I say yes to dating, it's like, it's pretending to be married. I mean, that's how I looked at it.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, this question's coming. I need to sit with this. So I tapped into Marion and I said, I need to have a conversation with you. And it was 4 a.m. and he shows up and I'm in that in-between state, very clear, conscious, but very relaxed. And I said, I need to know where I'm going to grow more spiritually. That is my question, because I love this person already. I can feel that. I'm falling for him. I got that. But it's about me. It's not about this relationship. Where am I going to grow the most spiritually? And he said, you will grow the most spiritually with Jamie.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'm going to need some signs now. And so every day on my walk, for a week, there was a Harris hawk on the same pole for 4 days in a row. Now, day 5, I got the bald eagle, right? Day 6, I got the bald eagle again, and he flew south. And I'm like, if I needed any more validation than this, it's it,
That's so great.
So yeah, that's how I said yes.
And then
And the good thing
Jamie,
is-
what about you? When did you propose and all that?
Well, it was fairly brisk, but I just knew I wanted to spend my life with her. And the genuine sincerity that she's just being her, no putting on airs. And I got a man is like, just do you. And the ability to have that kind of a connection and the love and the respect and questioning things. It wasn't just like, hey, it's we want to make sure that this is the most productive because that love is already there. But let's vibe that, let's match that as a couple. And so having the guys is like, sucker. To have that connection where she could just be her, no judgment, completely understanding, go yes, and I'm sure I've been through that as well. So when it's that kind of
Great.
an acceptance unconditionally, it allows us both to thrive. That we don't have to complete, we complement each other, and that kind of a connection allowed me to not. We don't have to justify things. We communicate, we share. And that love, that real love is actually real. It happens. You know, that great relationship is like, oh, sure. Yeah. Until you experience it, then it's like, wow, it can happen. And
And
the
don't
great
you
thing,
believe it's an old soul recognition of being together and knowing each other for eternity, really?
yeah, not
Yeah.
just this planet. That's exactly right. So it's that unified connection that we were able to just be ourselves, but we found each other. And coincidentally, there is no coincidence, but everything lined up to where it just fell into place. And she was very selective, so she's not silly, but we had such a good vibe that she was good. She was okay. And she was actually willing to be in a relationship. One-on-one, I just don't quite, I'm not open for the other kinds. So she's brilliant and I'm very thankful. You're
She
amazing.
is brilliant. So then you guys combined your work in a way, right? And how
Yes.
did
We
that come
did.
about?
It was very interesting. So within the first 6 months, we knew we wanted to spend more time together. I was living in Prescott, Jamie was in Phoenix. It was quite the distance, quite the way to strategize trying to have a date. And so we decided to move in together, but Jamie's business was so primarily, he does a lot of in-person appointments still, and that was very much in Phoenix. And I had built up a practice in Prescott, but it wasn't completely thriving. And this is something that I want our listeners to know. When you are not in the right place, your business isn't going to take off on a spiritual level until you are in the right place and the right or lined up with the right people. So my business was good, but I still had to take on extra jobs and do these things. So I was like, it makes more sense for me to move down there, but if I'm going to move down there, I'm not going to do this in a kind of like a half way. I want to be able to move down and I want to live with you if I move. I don't want to get an apartment or
Of
get a
course.
house or do whatever. Let's just move in together. And so we decided to do that. And then after I think about maybe 6 months or so, I was watching Jamie and he was working so hard, and every time he'd get on the phone just to book an appointment, he can't control himself. He'd start giving the reading right there. And I was like, Jamie, you can't that's
I
not
totally
pro-
relate, Jamie. This is
yeah.
why I had to get a booking calendar so that I was not talking to my clients until the session. I
Yes.
Yes.
totally
Yes.
relate.
Because you can't control, and I said, "Can I help you with that?" And so I decided, I had left everything that I knew. I left 20 years of my life, all my friends, all my community. I just picked up and walked away and I said, "Let me help you with that. I don't have enough to do right now." And so I became his assistant. I just help with the back end, and I know
Everything
I have a
else.
lot of cool skill sets, so I could build his website over again. I could do this, I could do that. And then when we really started combining forces, we were approached by a producer to do the Psychic Evolution podcast. And they approached Jamie, and I went to the meeting because, I'm his assistant. I just needed to know all the details and what I needed to put out in his schedule and stuff. And she looks at me and she goes, "I want you to be a part of it too." And I said,
Yes, yes,
"Yes."
yes.
I'm like, "Absolutely." And so then we even combined even more with psychic evolution when that happened. And I said, "Jamie, I have a passion for teaching. We need to start a mystery school. We need to
Yes.
teach people what we know. We'll make it super easy for them just to log on, watch classes. They can listen to our podcast. Like, you get all these questions. Let's just give them all of this information for practically, well, the podcast is free, but practically everything else is just it's just whatever people need right now, because people need guidance and they
Right.
need good information. And in the psychic community, there is a lot of garbage out there you have to weed through to get to the good teachings and the teachings that can help you thrive, you know? And there's
Yeah.
a lot of beautiful people that are doing this work too, and amazing people, but there is also, you got to weed through some of it. So I was like,
Yeah.
let's just put this out into the world, because the world needs to know that this is easy, that it's natural, that if you just open and accept it, it can just flow.
I love that, because you're both, when people go to your website, they see, wow, I can go study tarot with Maggie. I can go listen to the podcast. I can do a psychic reading with Jamie. I mean, it's like this wonderful smorgasbord of growth for people when they go there. And that union of the two of you to do this together is no accident. That's divine guidance that brought you together. So what is next for the two of you? Because you're both coming up on, I was looking at your cycles in numerology, and Jamie, you're in second Saturn return, and next year for you, Jamie, is a big power year, an 8 personal year. And you, Maggie, now you're in a power year, and next year you're at the end of a cycle, a 9 year of tying it all together. That to me feels like you guys are about to kind of catapult into a new level. What do you feel or say about that?
Yeah, I think a contributing factor is the practicality of spirituality. I do a lot of the scientific studies. I'm also on a specialty team, and what we're working on is the soul phone. And in that, it's getting closer and closer. So I feel like that might be a contributing factor as to that expansion. And in this case, very strong potential that it's going to happen in 2024.
Talk about the
Getting that
soul
next phase.
phone.
Well, what I can say is the technology is there. And when we can get people to have a direct connect with their soul prince of consciousness, it's going to escalate and elevate the consciousness of this planet. Because my thing is, I got such an insatiable hunger for this stuff, is we're making this connection as an interdimensional with our loved ones. But what about extraterrestrials? What about other galaxies, other universes, all these dimensions? So it's really just opening my soul into so many different avenues that I love doing this. And not like that, it's fun. If we can make it entertaining and informative, because to me, it doesn't always have to be this serious. It's like, life is serious enough, man. But when we can have fun and do this as a team together, that kind of a connection is, we just have to be us, but we're both thriving.
I love it so much, because Jamie, you're the 3-path soul. So the work you do has to be creative and fun. That's your vibe, that's what you came to deliver, the highest spiritual principle in a fun, creative, playful way. Whereas Maggie, who I can totally relate to, it's like, we're going to build a foundation. We're going to work hard. We're going to get all this content out there. And the two of you together, you really bring the whole package.
It's very complimentary. And in fact, like when we were deciding when to get married, I was like, we're going to get married on a 9 universal day, so that you have the 3 energy, I have the 4 energy, bringing it in, because it is such a compliment. And he has all these creative ideas. I'm like, well, let's do something with it. Like,
Right.
I can
You
build
make
it.
it practical. You make it real. Yeah.
I'll build it. I'll build, I'm now producing our own podcast. Like, I could do this, I could build a website. I could build, whatever it is that I need to learn, I will learn to make it happen.
Right.
And it's so much fun doing that.
And she does. She teaches herself everything. I'm impressed. Yeah, I'm like, wow.
I love you, Maggie. And I love you too, Jamie.
Yeah, well, we love you. And it's great to be just us. We don't have to be anything different. And the acclamation of humanity, giving ourselves our whole life to be able to connect and know ourselves the best that we can, but it's also allowing us to find that comfort within life and that easement. That kind of a connection it doesn't always have to be the hard work to keep going, not just surviving and existing, but living. It's a whole different vibe.
Yeah. And in terms of what's coming, gosh, the feeling I have is amazing of what's coming, but I don't have the clarity. Like my guides, my team, they're not giving me any details yet.
Right.
It's more like, just, this is the vibe. It's going to be different. It's going to look completely different. But both Jamie and I have this desire to help people, the desire to support humanity with everything that's evolving consciously.
Right.
And so that's the primary focus is, hey, we got to just stay true to our soul's purpose here and
Right.
let all the pieces line up the way they need to line up. And it's not always easy, when we're thinking about, well, when is this divine timing going to happen? And when is it actually going to align and really move forward? So when we think about those things and when we mull over those things, they can kind of get a little, we get down sometimes because it's not quick enough or it's not manifested or we don't have the vision.
Yeah.
Yet, both Jamie and I have a lot of faith,
Yeah.
and we have faith that we are accomplishing our soul purpose with every breath that we take because we're committed to it. And
And the
in that,
beautiful
that's
thing
important.
about what you're saying is that, and this is something I'm sure you work with your clients all the time on, and I do too, and with myself, is that divine timing is always perfect, but it usually has nothing to do with our desire for when we want it to happen, right?
Absolutely. Or how we want it to happen
Right.
sometimes.
Or how we want it to happen.
Until you
Mhm.
look back, it's like, yeah, divine timing, sure. And then when you can attain something and then look back to go, oh, now I see why this did or didn't
Right.
happen to get me here. It becomes the evolution of our soul and the recognition of life experience. And when we're able to find ourselves within life the best that we can and have this journey together, it is brilliant. It's fun, it's effortless, and it's powerful. And the good thing is we're both just being us. The very
So,
person that
Jamie,
may not
from your channeling abilities, let's take a moment right now and just see the future and see when there is a soul phone in everyone's home and they can be talking to spirit and remembering that we're not just physical beings. What does humanity look like then?
in a way, it's going to be the evolution of consciousness. And within that, also as our brothers and sisters from elsewhere, and we're extraterrestrials to everyone else, is very relative. But when they're standing before us, many perspectives will be changing. And for us to be able to help humanity to find itself as a beingness, as an entity of consciousness, that now we can start to share these gifts in so many different ways. And I'm going off onto a tangent because I'm starting to receive it. I'm like, all right, Lordy.
So
But that's that
good.
finding balance to go, okay, here it comes. Here we go. And you got to be fairly balanced. Like, oh, it's a lovely day. And on the inside, you're like, yeah. Gotta keep that balance, man. I'm very thankful. And for Mag to understand and accept me as to who I am is brilliant because that's all we need to be.
Yeah.
Perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
And our own identities unified.
And Maggie, what do you feel about this
Oh
future that's
gosh.
coming for humanity?
I part of what I really connected with in my reading in 1994 was the shift of consciousness between the Piscean age and the Aquarian age. And then also any kind of earth changes, right? So every 26,000, the earth has like this little, I got to clean house. I got to hiccup. I got to shake off the old energy. So that was a primary motivation for me because when I felt that in my soul, I was like, that could happen in our lifetime. That necessarily could happen. So not to be doom and gloom or anything, but
But
that's a potential.
COVID was a piece of that.
That's the acclamation.
Exactly.
That's the stuff.
And then they introduce different things and what it does is it shakes you up. It shakes off the old because we have to realize that humanity is going through the thralls of death from the old age and the birthing process of the new age. And both of those things are
I was
painful.
just going to say, any woman can tell you that birth is incredibly painful.
And, Marion used to tell me, he's like, you are a pallbearer to the old age and a midwife to the new age. That's the journey. And so there's going to be a lot of shifts of consciousness because as we see the old paradigms and the old structures crumble, whether it's institutions, governments, religions, all those things are crumbling right before us. There's not as much substance there. People don't believe it anymore. They're not buying into life has to be this way. And so the more awake we become, the more conscious we become, and the less we pay attention and focus on those things, they have the less influence they're going to have in our lives. And that is the crumbling of that old age. And then we have to tune ourselves into this expanded consciousness of a universal love, of a brotherhood of and sisterhood of humanity coming together, that divine feminine, divine masculine being in balance again, because the world's been severely out of balance and out of harmony. And that's every individual has to do this work themselves. And then it takes the leaders, the ones that can be the examples in the world and say, hey, I did it. You could do it. You can find happiness. You can find a balance within. You
And
can
make your
tune
living.
in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to address both of you and me, if we can just take a moment. I work with 20-something kids, and I have 20-something kids, and they are really, a lot of them are really struggling because they can sense and feel and know that things are crumbling, right? And when you think back to our 20s, there was a lot going on, but we really didn't feel that the planet was dying and, all these things that our children, our 20-something kids, are now aware of. So what is the positive way, and I do this for them with numerology, and I'm sure you do it with tarot, and Jamie does it with psychic readings. How can we condense that wisdom into a few statements now that would empower and encourage these beautiful, evolved 20-something souls who are looking around at this world going, I don't know if I can be here. Let's say something. Go for it, you two.
Go ahead, please.
Do your inner work. Okay. Each and every person has conditioning from their parents, their societies, their religions, their cultures. Do your work. Unravel that mystery. Understand why you are the way you are so you can tune into your soul self and be less, more anchored here, but less attached to here. And this is, it's like we have to be completely embodied on a soul level, but we got to make more room for that soul to come in. And when we clear out the fears, when we clear out the conditioning and the imprinting, those patterns, when we do our inner work, we are making more room for our soul to come in and be a part of our energy body and a part of our consciousness. And then we are completely guided each and every step of the way when we trust. So do your inner work. Allow yourself to see that that the world shouldn't look like this, and you are going through the death phases, because I was 20 years old when I made a commitment to help the death phase of this old structure, this old paradigm. So if you have that commitment, just stay committed to you. Learn about yourself, go within. This is an inner journey. It's not what you do in the outside world. It's an inner
That's
journey.
the important thing. It's an inner journey, and they have grown up focused on the outer because of social media and technology. And this is their saving grace moment, is turning within. And Jamie, speak to these 20-somethings.
Yeah, it's the same dynamic. And I have two boys of my own that are in their 20-somethings. And the ability that they were able to grow up with me, that this is all I do. And they were very comfortable. Both of them used their abilities beautifully and always grounded down to earth and always humble. And when they've been able to feel those experiences and then get validation to go, okay, you know what? I had a gut feeling about something, and that's how it played out. They got to see me in action all the time. So they saw the ability to receive information, but to trust it enough to have the guts to say something. And when people can learn to kind of value themselves, no longer narcissism, but self-realization, where we cannot give what we do not have. And for my boys, I'm very thankful. And for all of these kids, they're the way showers. They're the crazy ones that chose to be here to go, thanks, guys, because we need that bridge of connection.
I
But it's also
agree.
that stimulation.
They're here on purpose because they are the consciousness shifters, That's what I tell these kids. It's like, there's no accident you're in this world at this time. You agreed to be one of the helpers, one of the mystics, one of the healers as we shift. So I just want them to know this, because I know that so many of them get focused on, oh, the economy's tanking and how can I get a job and I won't be able to support myself. That's the outer world. Turn within, just like Jamie and Maggie are saying. Listen to your intuitive, all-knowing, not fear-based, but love-based inner self that knows there's always a next step and that everything is evolving exactly as it should.
And that we may not know the next step, but to be open to it. That's that
Yeah.
key.
Be in the world, but not of the world. Remember you are an eternal soul print of consciousness having this human experience. So yes, we have to get jobs. We have to pay bills. Cool. Sometimes it's not completely aligned with what we want to do spiritually or energetically. Yet, no matter where you are, your consciousness is permeating in your environment. So, how do you change the world if you're not in the world? So,
Right.
maybe you are working something that's not fulfilling you spiritually, but look at all the souls you are impacting. Look at how your energy, your light, your love can shift. It's all that easy.
Yeah. Well, you guys are such a blessing to the planet, to the universe, and I'm so happy I live near you.
Yes, we'll do coffee soon. Let's do that.
So I just want us to close, and I'm just going to close with gratitude for the two of you for doing your beautiful work in this world and doing it together now and being such shining, radiant light beings. It's an honor to know you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Sue. This has
Thank
been
you.
awesome.
Until we see each other again. And so it is.
And so